Hello, this is the second ward debate for Hoboken, and it's produced by Hudson Media Group, and my name is Al Sullivan. I'll be moderating it. We invited the two candidates, the incumbent Tiffany Fisher and her challenger Nora Martinez de Benedetto. Unfortunately, her challenger decided not to come, so we're going ahead with the debate anyway. We're going to give Tiffany an opportunity to introduce herself, and then we will ask some questions. We also will take some questions off of Facebook, okay, because we have a live feed from them.
Awesome.
Okay, Tiffany, take it away.
Great, thank you. Hi, my name is Tiffany Fisher. I'm currently the second ward representative on the Hoboken City Council. I have an MBA and 20-plus year career in commercial real estate and finance, most recently as the CFO of a large commercial real estate company. I also have been on the Hoboken Zoning Board and Hoboken Planning Boards for 3 years. I moved to Hoboken 25 years ago after business school, and in 2000 I moved to the second ward into the Hudson T building, where I've called my home ever since. I've actually been a Hoboken activist for a decade. I started this back when I was the condo president at my condo association, where from there I led the public effort against the monarch on behalf of second ward residents and pretty much all of Hoboken. And even on the city council, more recently, in our efforts to acquire Union Dry Dock, I've worked very closely with the mayor every step of the way. I've always been in this fight. I make your issues my issues, and we've gotten so much done over the past 4 years. Our list is long and it's broad, including things like saving taxpayers $40 million, making critical investments into our infrastructure, improving second ward parks, making our streets safer, addressing affordability issues, preserving our historic character, and also turning the tide on the empty storefronts on Washington Street. I love Hoboken, and when I'm often asked what I like most about it, I always say that it's our amazing sense of community. I tell people that it's like a cross between Cheers and Sesame Street, where everyone knows your name. When you walk down the street, you see familiar faces and friends, and we all share the same backyard. We have a small town feel, but we have real big city issues. And I think the Hoboken Second Ward residents deserve a representative who not only cherishes the treasures within our community, but also has the experience and demonstrated track record to address these big city issues and deliver real results. I'm that candidate, so please vote 1C on November 5th so I can keep engaging with, informing, and advocating for you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Since you've mentioned the big city issues here, probably the overwhelming one is the fact that overdevelopment, even though Zimmer administration, which you were part of, was a staunch opponent of, the population of Hoboken has doubled, maybe more over the last 30 years, bringing a host of problems. What are those issues, and what do you propose to do about addressing some of those issues?
I'm really glad you asked me that, because when I knock on doors and I listen to people in the second ward and across Hoboken, what you hear is everyone is concerned about a different quality of life issue, but every one of those quality of life issues kind of feeds back to overdevelopment, whether it's competition for parking and scarce transportation, just general feeling of overcrowding. We have an overcrowding issue in our lower schools. Getting in and out of Hoboken, it's literally what we hear the most. And historically, Mayor Zimmer definitely was, opposed to or overdevelopment, and she took that strong position. I am definitely opposed to the wrong development for Hoboken. We need to take a strategic approach and look at all of Hoboken and say what type of development works best for Hoboken. Property owners have rights. We don't have the ability to downzone and eliminate their rights to develop, but what we do have is the ability to say this is what Hoboken needs. Hoboken needs a lot more commercial development than residential development. I've been advocating for commercial development for the northwest corner of Hoboken. I advocated for commercial development in the southwest corner of Hoboken, I've advocated for commercial development as part of the New Jersey Transit Plan. The plan that the mayor just proposed to the city that we delayed the vote on at our last council meeting, and we had a community meeting on it the other night, that new plan is significantly revised, and it significantly increases the amount of residential development down near the path. The reason why commercial works better for Hoboken is it doesn't put a new population in competing for all of our scarce resources. It gives a more complementary type of population. It has people coming into Hoboken during commuting hours when our commuters are leaving. It provides potential jobs for people in Hoboken, so they don't have to actually leave and commute in and out of Hoboken every morning. It diversifies our tax base, brings a very important tax revenue stream that doesn't need the same municipal services that residents use, so it really makes sense for Hoboken, and that will be my focus.
Okay. You are in one of the most political cities in the planet, and one of the things that has changed over the last 4 years is the concept of what a reformer is. You mentioned in your opening that you've done things with the mayor, but it's clear that you have also opposed the mayor on political issues. And so what is a reformer, and how has that changed, and what is the relationship with the mayor?
So I would say the core definition of a reformer for Hoboken hasn't changed. The whole focus is on good government, transparency, involving the public. That's really what good government is and reform is in Hoboken. I don't think that's changed. I think some of the faces of reform have changed. I would like to think that I'm still a face of reform. Transparency, involving the public, being open and honest with our public. Good government is the core of who I am as a person, and I think that really extends to a lot of people in our community. It feels a little different now because, like you said, our environment is a lot more political. We're seeing more involvement from outside sources. As I've been very public about, we have a greater representation of unions around our construction sites and the money attached to those unions that, quite frankly, we didn't see under Mayor Zimmer at all. It's a challenging time, but I still think at the core of our community, there's a lot of people that really believe in reform principles, and I don't think that's gone out anywhere. Your question about Mayor Bala, this is what I've said to, this is what I say to people. I consider myself a very independent voice. I was an independent voice under Mayor Zimmer. I was Team Zimmer. I completely supported the majority of her agenda, but I pushed back sometimes. I didn't support her, her plan for Washington Street, but we ended up, I think, getting just a great outcome for Washington Street. With this mayor, what's interesting is we're getting a lot done. We agree on 90+% of the issues. The entire city council works well together. Notwithstanding some of the rhetoric that you hear, we actually vote, 85% of the time 9-0. We vote probably 90% of the time 8-1, and we've just accomplished so much. And under this mayor, we've gotten to accomplish things like a new Suez contract that is incredibly favorable for our community, saving taxpayers $30 million. We've been able to get a special improvement district done, which is historic for Hoboken. This mayor is open to good things happening and a variety of good things happening, and that's what we're seeing get done. But if I think that anything that he puts up is not good for Hoboken, my independent voice on those is going to be very strong.
Now, you have talked about, I guess, creating a commercial redevelopment for the North End, okay, and jobs. But one of the things, the big problems is that there isn't enough affordable housing.
Yeah.
So, how do you balance the job creation versus affordable housing in an environment which, let's face it, Hoboken is posh area for people who want to live in, and they're willing to pay top dollar to live there. How do you do those two things?
So I'll tell you what, from who I am as a person, I think that those that have more need to do more for those that have less, and I feel as though our system is rigged in favor of those that have more. And so I feel I've worked very hard in my life, and I feel it's my responsibility as an elected official to make sure that we are looking out for everyone in our community, and we have to, because of the market forces, because of land values, because of the interest in development profits, we have to actually work really hard to make sure that we are building affordable units. I supported all of the, I've been on actually the Affordable Housing Subcommittee for 4 years. We made huge achievements in affordability, our affordable housing ordinances this year. I was absolutely supportive of every one of those. As we think about development, I don't think about commercial to the exclusion of residential. I think of commercial as being something that similarly we have to force and make room for, because developers generally prefer to build luxury residential. So, it's almost as if I need to make sure that all of our legislation and planning requires both commercial development as well as affordable housing, and then everything else is really what the property owners most want to build, which is luxury residential. So we have to find that balance, and we have to be able to speak the same language as developers. We need to understand what their math is, what the profit calculations on their developments are, so that we can have that conversation and know that we can demand less profitable affordable housing and less profitable commercial development. But if we don't have that skill set at the table, then we don't have the ability to, I think, be successful in those negotiations.
Now, you mentioned in your opening that you were partly responsible for the monarch opposition. Okay. Now, you're also, because you live where you live, you're in also a conflict as a council person. How do you think you can still be a champion for the opposition of monarch as a council person when you're conflicted? You really can't vote that way because you're part of the resident that's impacted by it. How do you resolve that conflict?
You know what? I'd say a couple things. First, I've always been in the fight for our waterfront. I was, as I mentioned in the beginning, I kind of was the public face of this for a long period of time, but I certainly wasn't by myself. There is a huge population of people in our community that are fighting for the monarch. I've been one of those. I would say, as it relates to a vote, any settlement that ultimately occurs and any project that happens, sometime later next year, and I applaud the mayor for getting it to this point, is going to require consensus across the city council. So my individual vote, I feel, isn't going to matter that much, because this is a settlement that is going to involve a great development on the southern part of Hoboken, as well as the opportunity to convert, what was supposed to be open space on the north end to open space, both that will benefit all of Hoboken. And I really just feel as though my advocacy will continue as just being part of, as a resident in the North End, and being part of, that fight, as well as all of the, bringing financial and real estate tools and discipline to City Hall. They didn't have that before. So I've been able to bring, the requirement for real estate analytics and financial analytics and feasibility studies around all real estate projects. That is what will make a settlement like the Monarch settlement successful, is when our community or our government has the ability to negotiate with a developer using the same terms. So I do a lot, that touches real estate that will still ultimately benefit the advocacy for this settlement.
Now, one of the things that came up recently is one of the unions, maybe more of the unions, wanted to water down Hoboken's pay-to-play. Hoboken has a amazingly strict pay-to-play that's much stricter than the state. What's your position on that? Are you willing to bend to the unions, or is there a flexible place you can go where you are willing to open up the process a little more? Or do you want to stick to the kind of pay-to-play that is become the symbolic of reform in Hoboken?
Yeah, I will tell you that, my entire campaign is what they call grassroots. I'm very proud of the fact that almost all of my donors, I think I raised so far close to $20,000, and with the exception of a couple smaller donations, actually from 2 unions that I'm very proud to take, the rest of it are all from Hoboken residents and people that I'm close with. And to me, that's the right type of support that local elections should require and should have. I would like to see our pay-to-play levels stay at the same level that they are. If people want to move them a little, I mean, they're at $500. If they want to go to $1,000, I don't think that changes anything, but I'm comfortable right where they are. I think what we're seeing right now is, and what we've seen in the last couple of elections, is the kind of the introduction of money from outside of Hoboken in levels that can be, really impactful in our elections and very disruptive to our elections, right? And when one candidate can go and raise, a couple $100,000 from outside of Hoboken, and another candidate just can't, that just doesn't feel like it's a fair playing field on our local issues, and it feels as though it might create an undue influence on some of the really important issues, construction in particular. So I'm more comfortable keeping kind of our pay to play intact where it is, and that would directionally where I think I would want to go.
Now, let's talk about Second Ward, since you're represent the Second Ward. What do you see are the upcoming critical issues for that part of the town? I mean, every part of the town has a singular issue that's exclusive to their part. What do you see as the overriding issues in the Second Ward that you're going to face over the next 4 years if you're reelected?
It's interesting. I would say the standout issue that I hear from people the most is what I'll refer to as sidewalk safety, and we're not doing a great job there. And that is not only our actual physical sidewalks, but at our intersections, the crosswalks. It's everything relating to pedestrian safety. We have a lot of families with kids in the Second Ward, and that have to cross dangerous streets like 15th Street every day, 14th Street every day. And these streets have been identified, 15th Street in particular has been identified for over a decade as one of the top, most dangerous streets in the city of Hoboken. The, past 2 administrations have basically done nothing to improve this, and I think that we are going to need to do more. So this administration has introduced Vision Zero, a Vision Zero project, which I'm actually very thrilled about. It is kind of what I'll call a 360-degree approach to road safety, and it will include road design. It includes, education. It includes bringing the community in to understand more of what they can do. But it's everything pedestrian safety, and I think it's incredibly needed, and that's what I hear the most about in the Second Ward.
Now, one of the things that makes Hoboken attractive is its access to Manhattan. Mm-hmm. And the problem is you have ferries that are now overcrowded. You have buses that are overcrowded, and you have a light rail that leaves you off at 9th Street, and if you live on 15th Street, you have a long walk. What kind of transportation elements can you, as a council person, work to alleviate some of those? In particular, the light rail, which we've been trying to get at 14th Street, I think?
Yeah.
What do you do for that? How do you address that?
So it's a really interesting question about the light rail. And this really comes down to the ability to think strategically across, citywide, and in particular about what the city needs and how we get there. If we, in what order do we proceed? historically, the conversation within City Hall has been, we have to agree with the developer first on what they're going to develop, and at that point, we can have a conversation with New Jersey Transit to decide how we get a light rail station. I met with New Jersey Transit a couple weeks ago, unrelated, but raised this issue about the light rail and said, why don't we just start planning that now? Like if we have all the plans in place, by the time we have a developer in place that's going to build, we can be shovel ready, we can identify what they have, a fully costed plan, and then just start. Because the plans for a transportational hub like that, or a new stop, they take a couple years to do, and I think it's something that we can start now, and just be ready for when we actually have a plan for the north end. As it relates to other transportation alternatives, this is going to be the biggest challenge for Hoboken. What we know, we should be connecting more with Port Authority and making sure that the additional capacity that they're adding on the PATH trains, that Hoboken is going to keep that capacity. We recently lost 1 train an hour to Jersey City because Jersey City is growing faster than Hoboken is. That's a problem. The buses, there's little to nothing that we can do to the buses. New Jersey Transit, the best that they can offer at this point is to give us the articulated buses, which are the bendy buses, to give us more capacity on each bus, and they're going to try that. That is challenging for Hoboken because they don't work on all of our streets, but we can't get additional, we're told we can't get additional capacity at Port Authority. We're told that we can't have a private bus company, either go to Port Authority or drop elsewhere. So we really need to think about ferry service. We really need to think about light rail service. We really need to think about and bringing commercial development in as opposed to residential, so we're not putting more people competing for our scarce transportation resources, and we're actually providing employment for people within our city, so we can still have that population growth and not have the same challenges on our transportation. So we need to think about all of that strategically, and Hoboken has never thought about it strategically before.
Now, one of the interesting things about Hoboken is its politics in general, and how things have wound up in strange places. The alliances that are forming for this election are completely different from what they were in past. Now, you have the Councilman Russo, who appears to be supported by Bala, or at least not opposed by Bala. How important are the new alliances that you are making, and who do you see as vital to getting things done that cross over traditional boundaries of what was old Hoboken versus new Hoboken?
I'm going to address that in a couple ways. And the most important message I want the community and anyone who's watching to know is that this council actually works very well together, and we talk all the time amongst ourselves. I talk to every single council member. If Councilman Doyle has something that's important to him, I'll talk to him about it. If Councilman DeFusco, Councilman Russo, Giattino, we constantly are talking to each other on all issues, which is why if you look at the voting record, we vote together so much, so often. So I think what Hoboken residents need to know is that, politics aside, we're actually getting a lot done, and we're getting a lot done together. I'm someone who I firmly believe that I'll work with anyone who wants to work with me. And one of the things that I've realized over the last couple years is, historically there's very much been a, you're on my team or you're not on my team, or us versus them. And that's just not who I am as a person. I'll literally work with anyone who wants to work with me, and I'll work together with people on important issues as long as they're good for Hoboken. And what I feel like is the us versus them is the rhetoric that you hear just to create the divide for political and election purposes. But at the end of the day, we all need 5 votes on every issue. So everyone comes back together to make sure that we have the consensus and the right votes on issues that are important to residents. So I'm more comfortable not in the us versus them. I'm definitely more comfortable in a let's all get in a room together and figure out how to get this done. And I've demonstrated that. People see I can be opposed to the mayor publicly. I mean, he's clearly running a slate against all of the incumbents. But you know what? I sit in a room with him when we were doing Suez in particular. You know, we said, how are we going to solve this? And he said, I want your infrastructure to solve it, and he let me lead it. So we do work together behind the scenes. It's unfortunate that we sometimes give the impression otherwise.
Now, do we have any questions on Facebook we could throw at our candidate? Because I'm sure there are people. No? Okay, so you're stuck with me.
All right, that's okay.
All right, one of the critical issues that have been going on in Hoboken since I was there, and I lived there for about 4 years, water main breaks, infrastructure, and these things, and you made a deal with Suez, okay? How good a deal is that, and how do these various elements that you're working on go towards helping the infrastructure, the underground infrastructure in the city? Has it improved? Is it potentially going to get better, or are we still doing patchwork?
So Suez and infrastructure may not be like the sexiest and most interesting topic to the average person, but I can tell you this Suez deal is great for Hoboken, and it's probably the single thing that I'm most proud of. Hoboken has been plagued with water main breaks forever, and we had terrible contracts that were very favorable to Suez, and not that Suez did anything wrong. We just had contracts that allowed them to keep, 95% of our water revenues and put the entire burden of upgrading our system on Hoboken taxpayers. That's what we had historically. In 2017, what was presented to us by the prior administration was basically a continuation of that, where Suez was going to be able to keep, this significant amount of proceeds, of water revenues, and Hoboken residents were going to see a 15% increase in water rates just to fund infrastructure improvements. What we did with this new Suez contract is say, should Suez keep 95% of the water revenues? And the answer was no, they should only keep significantly less. So we were able to go from Suez keeping $5 million to only keeping $2 million, and that extra $3 million came to Hoboken, and $3 million, almost $3 million a year or $2.5 million a year for 15 years is a lot of money to be invested into upgrading our system. So it's a huge boom, no tax increase, no water rate increase, and all the money we need to be able to do the necessary upgrades to our system. Second, since I've been on the city council, in the first year, what I said to Mayor Zimmer at the time, she said we don't have a water contract that would allow us to make these investments, and I said we have to separate our contract from making the investments. We just have to make them, and if we have to bond for them, we have to start the process. And so under my finance and infrastructure subcommittee, we approved $10 million to start the process even before we had a Suez contract. Those improvements are finally being done this year. So to answer your question, we are literally on a pathway to seeing a total redo of our water system and an end to water main breaks.
Okay.
And yes, I'm very excited, and I probably just put a lot of people to sleep, but I'm excited.
Now, one of the problems for Hoboken is lack of open space, parks, and the big issue, the big fight right now is Union Dry Dock. Now, the council and the mayor seem to be on the same page for this one. What do you see as the progressive, what's going to happen over the next year as far as that? What is the council going to do? What do you think it has its ability to do, and do you think you'll be successful?
Oh my goodness. Excuse me. So, this is a tough one. Union Dry Dock is a really tough one, and it's tough because historically New Jersey Transit has indicated that this property is strategically important to them. And so, notwithstanding we're battling New York Waterway to take it, previously when we went down this path, New Jersey Transit stepped up and said, if you take it, we're going to take it from you. And their jurisdiction trumps our jurisdiction. It feels a little different this time. Just from what I hear, it doesn't sound like they're stepping in. I think, we know that, or we believe that New York Waterway has an alternative site. We believe that they can stay where they are in Weehawken. They've made plans previously to stay in Weehawken. So I think in this particular case, we actually may be successful in taking it. If the state's not going to get involved, maybe we're just playing kind of a game of chicken with them. And guess what? they need to stay where they are. That is the best outcome for Hoboken. And I'm 100% supportive of the mayor's position on this. I've continued to fight in support of this. I will continue to fight in support of his position. And I just remain, kind of fingers crossed, hopeful that we'll be able to get it.
Now, Hoboken